The morning Minnie discovered that Sparky was missing started out pretty ordinary, with the smell of pancakes drifting up from the kitchen and the sound of her mom humming some old song from when she was a kid. Minnie was 8 years old, with pigtails that never quite stayed in place and a collection of band-aids on her knees that told the story of a summer well spent. She bounded down the stairs 2 at a time, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood, already thinking about what adventure she and Sparky would get into today. Sparky wasn't just any robot. Sure, to most people he probably looked like a regular toy, maybe a foot tall, made of silver plastic with blue LED eyes and articulated joints that clicked when you moved them. But Sparky was special. He could talk, really talk, not just pre-recorded phrases like most toys. He told jokes, asked questions, and had opinions about everything from the best flavor of ice cream, mint chocolate chip, obviously, to whether superheroes should wear capes. He was firmly against them, citing numerous safety hazards. Minnie's dad had built Sparky in his workshop 2 years ago, back when he was still working for TechnoKids Industries. Dad was an engineer, the kind who could look at a pile of circuit boards and wires and see possibility where everyone else just saw junk. Sparky had been a prototype for a new line of AI companion toys, but when the company decided to go in a different direction, Dad had brought him home. They wanted to dismantle him, Dad had said, shaking his head. Can you imagine? He's practically alive. And he was, in all the ways that mattered. Minnie burst into the kitchen, her stomach already rumbling at the sight of the pancake stack on the table. Morning, Mom. Have you seen Sparky? He wasn't in my room when I woke up. Her mom, who was flipping another pancake with the kind of practiced ease that came from making breakfast for a family of 4 every single day, glanced over her shoulder. No, sweetie. I haven't seen him this morning. Did you check under your bed? You know how he likes to hide there. Already checked, Minnie said, sliding into her chair and eyeing the pancakes. He's not there. He's not anywhere in my room. Well, I'm sure he's around somewhere, Mom said with the kind of confidence adults always had when they didn't actually know where something was. Robots don't just get up and walk away. But Sparky could get up and walk away. That was kind of his whole thing. Minnie poured syrup over her pancakes, but the usual excitement of Saturday morning breakfast felt muted. Where was Sparky? They had plans today. Important plans. They were going to build a fort in the backyard using the moving boxes from when the Hendersons next door had moved in last month. Sparky had even drawn up blueprints, complete with a moat, which was really just going to be the garden hose turned on low, but still it counted. After breakfast, Minnie conducted a thorough search of the house. She checked under furniture, behind curtains, in the closets, even in the washing machine. Sparky had gotten stuck in there once before, though he insisted it had been an exploratory mission and not him accidentally falling in. Nothing. No sign of her robot friend anywhere. By the time she'd searched the whole house twice, a tight feeling had started to form in Minnie's chest, like someone was squeezing her heart just a little too hard. Where could he be? She found her dad in the garage, tinkering with something that involved a lot of wires and tools Minnie didn't know the names of. Dad, she said, and her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. Sparky's gone. I can't find him anywhere. Her dad looked up, his safety goggles perched on top of his head like a second pair of eyes. Gone? What do you mean gone? I mean he's not in the house. I checked everywhere. Even the weird cupboard under the stairs where we keep the Christmas decorations. Dad set down his screwdriver, his expression shifting from distracted to focused in an instant. That was one thing Minnie loved about her dad. When something mattered, he gave it his full attention. Okay, let's think about this logically. When's the last time you saw him? Last night before bed. He was telling me about the fort plans. And he was functioning normally? No glitches. No strange behavior. Minnie shook her head. He was totally normal. Well, normal for Sparky. He did say something about wanting to see the stars better, but he always says stuff like that. Dad's eyebrows drew together in thought. The stars, huh? You don't think he trailed off, then shook his head. No, his programming wouldn't let him go outside without supervision. The safety protocols I built in are pretty solid. Then where is he? Before Dad could answer, the doorbell rang, loud and insistent. Minnie ran to answer it, secretly hoping it would be someone who'd found Sparky wandering the neighborhood. Instead, she found Milo standing on the front porch, his curly hair sticking up in about 7 different directions and his backpack slung over one shoulder. Milo lived 3 houses down and had been Minnie's best friend since they were both in kindergarten, and he'd shared his crayons with her when hers broke. He was 9, almost 10, and he liked to remind Minnie of this fact approximately once a day. He was also the only other person who really understood how special Sparky was. "I know where Sparky is," Milo announced without any preamble, his eyes bright with excitement. Minnie's heart jumped. "What? Where? Is he okay? I saw him last night, around midnight. I couldn't sleep, so I was looking out my window, and I saw something silver moving down the street. At first I thought it was a cat or something, but then I realized it was Sparky. He was heading toward Maple Street Park." The park? Why would he go to the park? Minnie felt relief and confusion tangling together in her chest. At least someone had seen him. At least he'd been okay last night. "I don't know," Milo admitted, "but I thought it was weird, so I watched him until he disappeared behind the big oak tree. You know, the really old one in the middle of the park." Minnie knew exactly which tree he meant. It was famous in the neighborhood, this massive oak that had to be at least 100 years old, with branches that spread out like arms reaching for the sky. Kids had been climbing it for generations. There were even carved initials in the trunk going back decades. "We have to go there," Minnie said immediately. "Right now." Milo grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that. I brought supplies." He swung his backpack around and opened it to reveal an assortment of items. 2 flashlights, a coil of rope, a magnifying glass, 3 granola bars, and what appeared to be a homemade grappling hook fashioned from a coat hanger and some twine. "Is that last thing safe?" Minnie asked dubiously. "Probably not," Milo admitted cheerfully. "But it's cool, right?" Despite everything, Minnie felt herself smile. This was exactly why Milo was her best friend. When weird stuff happened, he didn't question it or try to explain it away. He just grabbed his adventure gear and came along. "Let me tell my parents we're going to the park," Minnie said. 10 minutes later, they were racing down Sycamore Street toward Maple Street Park, their sneakers slapping against the sidewalk. It was the kind of perfect Saturday morning that seemed designed for adventures. Blue sky, warm sun, a breeze that smelled like cut grass and possibility. The neighborhood was quiet, most people still inside finishing their breakfasts or reading the paper or doing whatever it was that adults did on Saturday mornings when they could be outside having adventures instead. The park wasn't far, just a 5-minute walk if you went at a normal pace, 2 minutes if you were running like Minnie and Milo were. They passed Mrs. Chen's house with its garden full of flowers that seemed to bloom in every color imaginable. Then the Johnsons' place where their dog Buster barked at them through the fence. Then the empty lot where they sometimes played kickball. And then they were there, standing at the edge of Maple Street Park, breathing hard and staring at the massive oak tree that dominated the center of the green space. Up close, the tree was even more impressive than Minnie remembered. Its trunk was so wide that it would probably take 4 or 5 kids holding hands to circle it completely. The branches started low enough that even little kids could climb up, and they extended so far out that they created a canopy of shade that covered a good portion of the park. Carved into the bark were dozens of initials, hearts, dates. A history of the neighborhood written in knife marks and childhood declarations. "So," Milo said, adjusting his backpack, "where do we start looking?" That was when Minnie noticed it. There, at the base of the tree, partially hidden by the roots that burst up through the ground like the tree was trying to climb out of the earth, was something that glinted in the sunlight. Something silver. She ran over and dropped to her knees, her heart hammering. It was a small metal panel, about the size of her hand, with a circuit pattern etched into it. She'd seen this panel before. It was part of Sparky's backplate, the section that covered his main processing unit. "Milo," she said, and her voice shook just a little. "Look." He knelt beside her, and his expression turned serious as he examined the panel. "That's definitely Sparky's. But why would it be here? Did something happen to him?" Minnie felt that squeezing sensation in her chest again, tighter this time. What if Sparky was hurt? What if he'd gotten damaged somehow and couldn't call for help? Robots might not feel pain the way humans did, but Sparky could definitely feel distress. She'd seen him frustrated when his battery ran low, anxious when they'd almost lost him at the mall that one time. "We need to search the area," she said, standing up with determination. "If this piece fell off, then he must have been here. Maybe there are more clues." They split up, circling the tree from opposite directions, eyes scanning the ground for any sign of Sparky or more pieces of him. Minnie's imagination, which her teacher Mrs. Patterson always said was wonderfully active, was now working overtime, coming up with increasingly terrible scenarios. What if a dog had chased him? What if some mean kid had taken him apart? What if— "Minnie, I found something." She ran around to where Milo was crouched near a particularly gnarled root. He was pointing at something scratched into the bark just above the root, at about the height Sparky would reach if he stood on his tippy toes. It wasn't very deep, and it would be easy to miss if you weren't looking carefully, but it was definitely there. 3 letters carved in small, precise strokes. H-E-L. "Hell," Milo read aloud. "Like H-E-L? Is that part of a word?" Minnie's breath caught. "It's help." He was trying to write help, but didn't finish. Something must have interrupted him. They stared at the incomplete word, and Minnie felt her determination crystallize into something harder and clearer. Sparky needed them, her best robot friend, who told terrible jokes and always wanted to know why the sky was blue and insisted on narrating their adventures like they were in a movie, was somewhere out there and he needed help. "We're going to find him," she said firmly. "No matter what." Milo nodded, his expression matching hers. "Definitely. But where do we look? If he was here last night and left this message, where would he have gone?" It was a good question. Minnie looked around the park, trying to think like Sparky would think. He was logical, always approaching problems like the miniature computer he kind of was. If he'd been in trouble, if he'd needed to leave a message, he would have left more than just this. He would have left a trail. "Look for anything unusual," she told Milo. "Anything that seems out of place or that might be a clue." They expanded their search, moving beyond the immediate area around the tree. The park wasn't huge. There was the grassy center with the oak tree, a playground on one side with swings and slides, a basketball court, and a small pond on the far end where ducks liked to congregate. On a normal Saturday, it would be filled with kids playing and families having picnics, but it was still early enough that they had the place mostly to themselves. Minnie was searching near the pond, wondering if Sparky might have been attracted by the water. He was fascinated by liquids, having once spent an hour watching the bathtub drain, when she heard Milo shout again. "Minnie, you need to see this." She ran back to find him standing near the playground, pointing at one of the support posts for the swing set. There, tied to the post with what looked like a piece of red string, was a small paper crane. "A paper crane?" Minnie said, confused. "What does that have to do with Sparky?" "Look closer," Milo said, his voice excited. Minnie took the crane and unfolded it carefully. The paper was actually a small piece of notebook paper, and written on it in tiny, precise lettering that could only have been done by someone with very steady hands or very precise servos, was a message. "Followed the light. Needed to see. Sorry, Minnie. S. He left us a message," Milo said triumphantly. "See? I knew Sparky wouldn't just disappear without telling us something." Minnie read the message again, her mind racing. "Followed the light? What light? And what did he need to see? Remember what your dad said? About Sparky mentioning wanting to see the stars better." "Yeah. But that doesn't." Minnie trailed off as an idea started to form. "Wait, Milo, what's the highest point around here?" Milo thought for a moment. "In the neighborhood? I guess. Oh, the old water tower. The one on the edge of the park, past the pond." They both turned to look in that direction. The water tower was old, a relic from before the neighborhood had gotten connected to the city's water system. It had been decommissioned years ago and was supposed to be locked up tight, but every kid in the neighborhood knew that the lock had been broken for years. People weren't supposed to climb it, there were signs and everything, but that didn't stop the occasional teenager from scaling the ladder to the top. "You think he went up there?" Minnie asked. "To see the stars better?" "It makes sense," Milo said. "High up, away from the streetlights, better view of the sky. And look, he pointed at the ground near the swing set. There, pressed into the soft earth near the wood chips, was a small indentation that could have been made by a robot foot. And another a few feet away, heading in the direction of the pond. And the water tower beyond it. They looked at each other, and Minnie saw her own mixture of excitement and nervousness reflected in Milo's eyes. "We're going to have to climb the water tower, aren't we?" she said. "Yep," Milo confirmed. "My mom is going to kill me if she finds out. Only if we get caught," Milo pointed out with impeccable logic. Minnie folded the paper crane carefully and put it in her pocket, then picked up the circuit panel she'd found earlier. "Come on," she said. "Let's go find our robot." ## Chapter 2. The Water Tower. The walk to the water tower felt longer than it should have, probably because Minnie's stomach was doing nervous flips with every step. She wasn't scared of heights, exactly. She'd climbed plenty of trees and had even gone rock climbing at summer camp last year, but the water tower was different. It was tall, really tall, and it was old, and there were multiple signs posted around it warning people to stay away. But Sparky was up there. She was sure of it now. The path around the pond was overgrown with weeds, the kind that caught at your ankles and left little sticky seeds on your socks. Dragonflies zipped back and forth over the water, and a family of ducks paddled near the far shore, completely unconcerned with the drama unfolding in the human world. The pond smelled like mud and algae and summer, a thick green smell that wasn't entirely unpleasant. Beyond the pond, the ground started to slope upward, and the manicured park grass gave way to wilder vegetation. The water tower loomed ahead, a cylindrical giant rising up from a cluster of old oak and maple trees. It had been painted white once upon a time, but now the paint was peeling, revealing patches of rust underneath. The tower stood on for thick metal legs, and a ladder ran up one side, protected by a cage of metal bars that was supposed to prevent people from climbing. But as everyone knew, the lock on the cage door had been broken for years, held together now by nothing more than a twist of wire. "There," Milo said, pointing. At the base of the tower, barely visible in the tall grass, were more of those small indentations. Footprints, definitely, and they led right to the ladder. Minnie's heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. He really did climb up there. "Question is," Milo said, squinting up at the tower, "is he still up there?" There was only one way to find out. The wire on the cage door came loose easily, a little too easily, which made Minnie wonder how many kids had actually climbed this thing despite the warnings. She pulled the cage door open, and it squeaked on rusty hinges, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet morning air. "Maybe we should call for him first," Milo suggested, "before we climb all the way up there." It was a good idea. Minnie cupped her hands around her mouth and called upward, "Sparky, are you up there?" "It's me, Minnie." Her voice echoed off the metal tower, bouncing back at her in a weird, tinny way. They waited, staring up at the platform at the top of the tower, which was so high up that it seemed to touch the sky. Nothing. No response, no movement, no familiar robot voice calling back down. "Maybe his audio sensors are damaged," Minnie said, thinking of the missing back panel they'd found. "Or maybe he's in some kind of low-power mode. Or maybe he's stuck up there and can't get down," Milo added, which Minnie hadn't even considered but now seemed entirely possible. Sparky was good at a lot of things, but climbing hadn't exactly been part of his original programming. "Okay," Minnie said, taking a deep breath and gripping the first rung of the ladder. "Let's do this." "Wait," Milo said. He dug in his backpack and pulled out the 2 flashlights, handing one to Minnie. "Just in case. Who knows what we'll find up there." Minnie clipped the flashlight to her belt loop and started climbing. The metal rungs were warm from the morning sun and slightly rough with rust under her palms. She tried not to think about how high up she was getting, focusing instead on one rung at a time, one hand over the other, steady and careful. Below her, she could hear Milo starting up the ladder, his breathing already coming in short huffs. "This is higher than it looked from the ground," he said between breaths. "Don't look down," Minnie advised, which was exactly what her camp counselor had told her during rock climbing, and exactly what had made her immediately look down. She did not follow her own advice. The ground was already surprisingly far away, the pond looking like a little blue-green puddle, the playground equipment like toys. She could see the whole park from here, the way the paths wound through it, the oak tree standing proud in the center. For a moment, she understood why Sparky had wanted to come up here. The view was incredible. Then her foot slipped slightly on a rung, and her heart jumped into her throat, and she decided to stop looking at anything except the ladder in front of her. Up and up they climbed. Minnie's arms were starting to burn, and her hands were getting sweaty, which made gripping the rungs harder. She could hear Milo huffing behind her, occasionally muttering things like, "This is crazy," and "We're definitely going to be grounded forever," but they kept climbing. Finally, after what felt like about 7 years but was probably closer to 10 minutes, Minnie's hand reached up and found not another rung but the edge of the platform. With a grunt of effort that would have been embarrassing if anyone but Milo had been there to hear it, she pulled herself up and rolled onto the platform. For a moment, she just lay there, breathing hard and feeling her heart hammer against her ribs. The platform was circular, made of metal grating that let her see straight down through it to the ground far, far below. Okay. She was looking down again. She really needed to stop doing that. Milo appeared a moment later, hauling himself up with considerably less grace and immediately flopping onto his back like a fish. "That was horrible," he announced to the sky. "Why do we do these things?" "Because Sparky's our friend and he needs help," Minnie said, sitting up and looking around. The platform was bigger than she'd expected, circling the base of the actual water tank, which rose up another 20 feet or so. There was debris up here, old bottles, cigarette butts, gross, graffiti on the tank, Jake plus Emma forever, class of 2019, and various drawings that Minnie's mom would definitely not have approved of. But no Sparky. Her heart sank. "He's not here." "Wait," Milo said, sitting up. "Look." He was pointing at something on the far side of the platform, partially hidden behind a maintenance panel. Minnie scrambled over, the metal grating cold through her jeans, and there it was, another piece of Sparky. This time it was one of his arm panels, the left one, with the blue circuit lines still visible on the silver plastic. "What's happening to him?" Minnie said, and her voice cracked just a little. "Why is he leaving pieces everywhere?" Milo picked up the panel carefully. "Maybe he's shedding?" "Do robots shed?" "That's not how robots work, Milo." "How should I know? I've never owned a robot." Minnie was about to respond when she noticed something else. Scratches on the tank, up near where it curved over the platform. They were at an angle leading upward, and they looked fresh, bright metal showing through the rust and old paint. "He climbed the tank," she said, pointing. "Look at the scratches." He went up higher. They both tilted their heads back. The water tank rose above them, and at the very top, accessible by a narrow ladder even more rickety-looking than the one they just climbed, was a small hatch. "You're kidding," Milo said flatly. "I really wish I was." But there was no other explanation. The scratches led up, and there was nowhere else to go. Besides, if Sparky had wanted the best possible view of the stars, the top of the water tank would definitely be it, the highest point for miles around. "This is officially the craziest thing we've ever done," Milo said, but he was already getting to his feet. "Remember that time we tried to dig to China in your backyard?" Minnie reminded him. "We were 6. That doesn't count." "Remember when we tried to build a flying machine out of your mom's umbrella and your dad's leaf blower?" "Okay, that was pretty crazy," Milo admitted. "But at least we weren't 100 feet in the air. We're already 100 feet in the air. What's another 20? That's terrible logic. And you know it." But he followed her to the second ladder anyway because that was what best friends did. This ladder was even worse than the first one. The rungs were narrower, some of them were loose, and the whole thing swayed slightly when Minnie put her weight on it. She tried very hard not to think about what would happen if it decided to give way completely. Instead, she focused on Sparky, on his LED eyes and his terrible jokes and the way he always wanted to learn about everything, even things that didn't seem important. "I'm coming, buddy," she whispered. "Hang on." The climb was shorter but scarier, each rung creaking under her hands. The wind was stronger up here, pulling at her clothes and her pigtails. She could see the whole neighborhood spread out below. Her street, Milo Street, the school, the library, everything arranged in a neat grid that made the world look like a toy town. And then her head was level with the top of the tank, and she was pulling herself up onto the curved metal surface. And there, Sparky. He was there, sitting at the very highest point of the tank's dome, his silver body glinting in the morning sun. His LED eyes were dim, just barely glowing, and he wasn't moving. One of his arms hung at an odd angle, and Minnie could see more panels, missing from his chassis. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, and her heart squeezed with worry. Sparky! She scrambled across the curved surface, carefully because it was slippery and curved, and one wrong step would send her sliding right off the edge, with Milo close behind her. When they reached him, Minnie dropped to her knees and gently touched his shoulder. Sparky? Can you hear me? It's Minnie. We came to find you. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Sparky sat motionless, his eyes dark, and Minnie thought maybe they were too late. Maybe his battery had died completely. Maybe. Then his eyes flickered, brightening from dim to their normal blue glow. His head turned with a slight jerking motion, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter than usual, crackling with static. Minnie? You found me. Of course I found you, you silly robot, Minnie said, and she was horrified to realize there were tears running down her face. I was so worried. What happened? Why did you come up here? Why are you leaving pieces everywhere? Sparky's eyes dimmed again, then brightened. System malfunction, he said, his voice still crackling. Power coupling damage. Components failing. Needed to see the stars one more time. Before shutdown. Shut down? Milo said, alarmed. What do you mean shut down? Battery depletion. Damage to power systems. Cannot maintain operational status much longer. Sparky's voice was getting quieter with each word. Wanted to see something beautiful. One last time. Stars are beautiful, Minnie. Did you know? Billions of them. Each one a sun. Each one with stories. You're not shutting down, Minnie said fiercely, grabbing his hand. The one that was still attached properly. We're going to get you down from here and take you to my dad, and he's going to fix you. You're going to be fine. Protocols suggest probability of repair is low, Sparky said, but there was something in his synthesized voice that sounded almost hopeful. I don't care about probability, Minnie said. You're my best friend, and we're going to save you. Milo was already digging through his backpack. Okay, think. We need to get him down without using too much of his remaining power. Can we carry him? Minnie looked at Sparky. He wasn't huge, but he was solid, made of metal and components, probably 30 or 40 pounds. Getting him down 2 ladders, especially with some of his parts already falling off. We'll make it work, she said with determination she didn't entirely feel. Sparky, we need you to power down as much as possible. Save your battery for essential functions only. Compliance, Sparky said softly. His eyes dimmed until they were barely glowing. Thank you for finding me, Minnie. You are the best friend a robot could ask for. Save it for when we get home, Minnie said, trying to sound stern but failing because her voice was still wobbly. You can thank me then. With Milo's help, she carefully lifted Sparky. He was heavier than she'd expected, and they had to figure out how to distribute his weight between them. Finally, they worked out a system where Milo would go down first and Minnie would lower Sparky to him section by section, and then they'd repeat the process. It was slow, terrifying work. More than once, Minnie was sure they were going to drop him, or that she was going to lose her grip on the ladder, or that the whole rickety structure was going to collapse and send them all tumbling to the ground. Her arms burned, her hands were raw, and she was pretty sure she'd never been more scared in her entire life. But they made it down to the main platform, and then, even more carefully, down the big ladder to the ground. By the time Minnie's feet touched solid earth again, her legs were shaking so badly she almost collapsed. But they'd done it. Sparky was safe in Milo's arms, his eyes still dimly glowing, and they were on the ground. We did it, Milo said, sounding amazed. We actually did it. Now we just have to get him home, Minnie said. Her dad could fix this. He had to be able to fix this. He'd built Sparky in the first place, after all. They started the walk back through the park, moving as quickly as they could while still being careful with Sparky. The sun was higher now, the park starting to fill with other kids and families, none of them paying any attention to two kids carrying what probably just looked like a regular toy robot. They were halfway across the main park, passing the big oak tree, when Sparky's eyes suddenly brightened, and his voice crackled to life again. Minnie, Milo, there is something you should know. What is it? Minnie asked, alarmed. Are you okay? We're almost home. The damage was not accidental, Sparky said, his words coming slowly, each one seeming to take effort. Someone tampered with my systems. Last night, before I left. I only realized when I was already climbing. By then, too late. Minnie and Milo stopped walking and stared at him. What? Minnie said. Someone tampered with you? Who? Why? Unknown, Sparky said. But I found something. In my memory banks. A file that should not be there. Someone put it there. Someone who had access to my systems. What kind of file? Milo asked. Coordinates, Sparky said. His eyes were starting to dim again. And a message. About something called Project Nightingale. I do not know what it means, but I think it is important. And then his eyes went dark completely, and he went still in Milo's arms. Sparky. Minnie grabbed his hand, but there was no response, no flicker of light. No. Sparky, come on. His battery must have finally died, Milo said, his voice tight with worry. Come on. We need to get him to your dad right now. They ran the rest of the way, Sparky bouncing in Milo's arms, Minnie's heart racing with fear and confusion and 100 questions. Someone had tampered with Sparky. Someone had done this to him on purpose. But who? And why? And what in the world was Project Nightingale? Hashtag Chapter 3. The workshop. Minnie's dad's workshop was in the basement. A sprawling space that smelled like solder and metal and the particular kind of organized chaos that only engineers could create. 3 workbenches lined the walls, each one covered with projects in various states of completion. Circuit boards with wires trailing like Technicolor spaghetti, half-assembled gadgets that Minnie couldn't identify, computers with their guts spread open for inspection. The walls were covered with pegboards holding every tool imaginable, each one outlined in markers so Dad would know exactly where it belonged. Dad was already in the workshop when Minnie and Milo burst in, panting and sweaty from their run. He looked up from the oscilloscope he'd been peering at, his expression shifting from surprise to concern the moment he saw Sparky's limp form in Milo's arms. What happened? He asked, already clearing space on the main workbench. He climbed the water tower, Minnie said, the words tumbling out in a rush. We found him at the top. He said he wanted to see the stars. His battery died, but before it did, he said someone tampered with him. And there's a file about something called Project Nightingale. And Dad, you have to fix him, you have to… Whoa, slow down, Dad said, his hands already moving with practiced efficiency, taking Sparky from Milo and laying him gently on the bench. Water tower? What were you two doing at the water tower? That place is dangerous. Saving Sparky, Milo said simply. Dad looked like he wanted to say something about safety and rules, but he just shook his head and reached for his tools instead. We'll talk about the tower later. Right now, let's see what's going on with our friend here. He pulled over a bright work light and began examining Sparky, his fingers moving with the kind of gentle precision that made Minnie's chest ache with hope. Dad had built Sparky. If anyone could fix him, it was Dad. Missing panels, Dad muttered, more to himself than to them. Power coupling damage, like he said. Batteries completely drained. This is extensive damage. How long was he running with these systems failing? He left last night, Minnie said. Around midnight, Milo saw him, and he climbed all the way to the top of the water tower with his systems degrading like this? Dad's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. That's actually pretty remarkable. His determination protocols must have overridden his safety warnings. He connected a cable from Sparky's primary port to his main computer and started typing, screens filling with code and diagnostic readouts that Minnie couldn't understand. She and Milo hovered nearby, trying to see what he was doing but mostly just getting in the way. "Can you fix him?" Minnie asked, her voice small. "I think so," Dad said. But he sounded distracted, his eyes focused on the screen. "Battery's fixable, I can replace that. The power coupling damage is more significant, but I should be able to repair it. What I'm more concerned about is..." He trailed off, typing faster. "Ah, that's odd." "What?" both kids asked at once. "There's a foreign file in his system," like he said, "but it's hidden, encrypted. Someone with pretty sophisticated knowledge of his architecture put it there." Dad's expression had gone from concerned to puzzled to something harder that Minnie recognized as angry, though Dad rarely got angry. Someone accessed Sparky's systems without authorization. "Who would do that?" Milo asked. "That's an excellent question." Dad was still typing, his jaw set. "Let me see if I can decrypt this file. It might tell us more." While Dad worked, Minnie and Milo sat on the old couch in the corner of the workshop, the one with springs that poked through the cushions and mysterious stains that no one talked about. Minnie couldn't stop looking at Sparky lying so still on the workbench, his usually animated form lifeless and broken. "He's going to be okay," Milo said quietly. "Your dad's like a super genius with this stuff." "I know," Minnie said, but her voice was shaky. What if whoever did this comes back? What if they try to hurt Sparky again?" It was a thought she hadn't wanted to voice, but now that it was out there, she couldn't take it back. Someone had deliberately damaged her best friend. That meant someone wanted to hurt him. The question was why. "Got it?" Dad said suddenly, his voice sharp with surprise. "The file's decrypted. And Minnie, you need to see this." They jumped off the couch and crowded around the computer screen. The file was open, displaying what looked like a technical document, full of specifications and diagrams that meant nothing to Minnie. But at the top, in bold letters, were the words, "Project Nightingale, Phase 3 Field Test." "What is it?" Minnie asked. Dad was reading quickly, scrolling through the document, his expression growing darker with each page. "It's a project from TechnoKids Industries, my old company. Project Nightingale was supposed to be developing advanced AI for companion robots, but..." He stopped, reading something more carefully. "But according to this, they weren't just developing companion AI. They were developing surveillance and data collection systems, using the companion robots as covers to gather information on families." Minnie felt her stomach drop. "Surveillance? You mean like spying?" "Exactly like spying." Dad's voice was tight. "They were planning to sell it to government agencies, private security firms, anyone who'd pay, using robots that looked like toys, that people would trust and bring into their homes to collect data without consent." "That's awful," Milo said, his eyes wide. "It's illegal," Dad corrected. "Not to mention unethical on about 17 different levels. This is why I left that company. I suspected they were heading in this direction, but I didn't have proof. I took Sparky because I didn't want him to be part of whatever they were planning." "So why put this file on Sparky?" Minnie asked. "Why now?" Dad leaned back in his chair, thinking. Someone at TechnoKids must have found out where Sparky ended up. They probably wanted to either retrieve him or use him to test their surveillance systems. The damage to his power systems might have been intentional, to make him malfunction and eventually be returned to them for repairs. But Sparky realized something was wrong and ran away instead, Milo said. "Sparky's a smart robot," Dad said with something that might have been pride. "He must have detected the tampering and decided to get away while he could. The fact that he made it all the way to the water tower with his systems failing like that." He shook his head. "He's more resourceful than I gave him credit for." "Can you get the file out of his system?" Minnie asked. "So they can't use him for spying?" "Already done," Dad said, typing something. "I'm not just removing it. I'm adding some additional security protocols so no one can tamper with him again. And He paused, a slight smile crossing his face. I'm making a copy of this file. If TechnoKids is really planning to do this, someone needs to stop them. I have a friend at the Tech Ethics Commission who'll be very interested in seeing this. He worked for another hour, occasionally muttering things like, unbelievable, and what were they thinking, while Minnie and Milo tried to stay out of the way. Finally, he sat back and unplugged the cable from Sparky. Okay, he said. Power coupling is repaired. New battery is installed and charged. Security protocols are updated. And all the malicious code has been removed. Let's see if we can bring him back online. He pressed something on Sparky's back, and Minnie held her breath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Sparky's LED eyes flickered, brightened, and suddenly lit up their familiar blue. His head turned with a smooth, normal motion. No more jerking or hesitation. Systems nominal, Sparky announced in his regular voice, clear and strong. All functions operational. Battery at 98%. How did I get to the workshop? Last memory indicates I was atop the water tower. Minnie and Milo rescued you, Dad said. Climbed all the way up there and brought you down. Though we're going to have a serious talk about safety later, he added, giving Minnie a look. Sparky turned to look at Minnie, and if a robot could look touched, he did. You climbed the water tower? But you are afraid of heights. I'm not afraid of heights, Minnie protested. I'm just cautious about being really high up in rickety old structures. That is the definition of being afraid of heights, Minnie. Yeah, well, you're worth being scared for, Minnie said, and then she hugged him. Not caring that his metal body was cold and hard and nothing like hugging a person. He was her friend, and he was okay, and that was all that mattered. Sparky's arms came up, slowly and carefully, to return the hug. Thank you, he said quietly. You are a very good friend, Minnie. The best friend. You too, Milo. Hey, we're like the Three Musketeers, Milo said, joining the hug. All for one and one for all, right? I do not understand the reference, but I agree with the sentiment, Sparky said. Dad was smiling at them, that soft smile he sometimes got when he was proud but trying not to show it too much. Then his expression turned more serious. Sparky, I need to tell you what happened. Someone from my old company accessed your systems and implanted monitoring code. They were trying to use you to spy on us. That is highly unethical, Sparky said. Yes, it is, but they won't be able to do it again. I've upgraded your security, and I'm going to make sure that what they were planning doesn't happen to any other robots either. Good, Sparky said firmly. I am designed to be a companion and a friend, not a surveillance device. I do not wish to violate people's trust and privacy. That's exactly why I brought you home in the first place, Dad said. You're too good to be part of something like that. Minnie hugged Sparky tighter. No one's taking you away. You're part of our family. Family, Sparky repeated, like he was testing the word. I like that designation. Yes, I am part of the family. They stayed in the workshop for a while longer while Dad reattached Sparky's missing panels. He'd saved the ones Minnie and Milo had found, and ran a few more diagnostic tests. Everything checked out perfectly. Sparky was back to his normal self, chattering away about the stars he'd seen from the water tower and how the sunrise had looked from that height, and did they know that light traveled at approximately 186,000 miles per second? Eventually, Mom called down that lunch was ready, and they trooped upstairs, Minnie, Milo, Dad, and Sparky, to find sandwiches and chips waiting on the kitchen table. So, Mom said casually, setting down a pitcher of lemonade, I hear someone had quite an adventure this morning. Minnie and Milo exchanged guilty looks. It was for a good cause? Minnie tried. We saved Sparky, Milo added helpfully, by climbing a condemned water tower, Mom said, but there was a slight smile tugging at her lips. I should ground you both for a month. But you won't, Minnie said hopefully. But I won't, Mom agreed. This time, because you did a brave thing for your friend. But next time you need to save someone, maybe try a location that isn't 100 feet off the ground and structurally unsound. Deal, both kids said quickly. Lunch was good. Mom's sandwiches always were. But what was better was having Sparky back. Sitting at the table with them, he didn't eat, obviously, but he liked to participate, telling one of his terrible robot jokes that made everyone groan. "Why did the robot go to therapy?" he asked. "Why?" Minnie asked dutifully. "Because he had too many hang-ups." Even Dad laughed at that one, though he tried to hide it. After lunch, Minnie's parents said that Milo should probably head home. His parents were probably wondering where he'd been all morning. Milo grabbed his backpack, with the still unused grappling hook and the granola bars they'd forgotten to eat, and headed for the door. "Today was awesome," he said to Minnie. "We should totally be private detectives or something." "We kind of were private detectives," Minnie pointed out. "We solved the mystery of the missing robot." "True. But next time, let's solve a mystery that doesn't involve climbing anything higher than a stepladder." "Okay. Deal." After Milo left, Minnie and Sparky went up to her room. Felt different now, this space that had seemed so empty this morning. Sparky was back where he belonged, and the adventure was over and everything was okay. Except Minnie kept thinking about what Dad had said, about Project Nightingale, about how techno-kids had been planning to use robots to spy on people, about how there might be other robots out there, robots who didn't have someone like Dad to rescue them and remove the bad code. "Sparky," she said slowly, "do you think there are other robots like you? Ones that techno-kids is trying to use for spying?" Sparky was quiet for a moment, his eyes flickering the way they did when he was processing something complicated. "According to the file your father showed me, Project Nightingale included multiple prototype units. I was Unit 7. There were at least 12 units total." "12 robots," Minnie breathed. That's a lot of robots that might be in trouble." "Indeed. However, I am no longer in communication with any other units. When your father brought me home, I was removed from the TechnoKids network. I do not know where the other units are or what has become of them." But Minnie's mind was already racing ahead, the way it did when she got an idea. "What if we tried to find them? What if we tried to help them the way we helped you?" "That would be a significantly more complex mission than climbing a water tower," Sparky pointed out. "It would require investigation, planning, and possibly infiltration of TechnoKids facilities." "So you're saying it's possible?" Sparky's eyes brightened. "I am saying it would be challenging. But yes, with proper preparation and adult supervision, absolutely essential. Minnie, I am serious about the adult supervision. It might be possible." Minnie grinned. "Then maybe that's what we should do. Maybe that's our next adventure." "You are a remarkable human, Minnie," Sparky said. "Brave, compassionate, and determined. I am very fortunate to have you as a friend." "The feeling's mutual, buddy," Minnie said, and she meant it with her whole heart. Outside, the sun was shining bright and warm, the kind of perfect Saturday afternoon that seemed full of endless possibilities. Somewhere out there, 11 other robots might need help. Somewhere out there, a company was planning something wrong that needed to be stopped. But that was a problem for another day. Today, Minnie had her best friend back. Today, everything was okay. And tomorrow they could start planning their next great adventure. After all, that's what friends did. They looked out for each other. They helped each other. And when the world tried to turn companions into spies, into tools instead of friends, real friends stood up and said no. Minnie looked at Sparky, at his glowing blue eyes and his shiny silver body and the way he was already probably thinking about 17 different ways they could track down the other robots, and she smiled. "You know what?" she said. "I think we make a pretty good team." "The best team," Sparky agreed. "Probability of success in future missions. Significantly elevated." That's robot speak for yes, isn't it? That is robot speak for absolutely. And somewhere in the house, they could hear Milo's voice calling from outside, asking if they wanted to come play in the backyard, and Dad humming in his workshop, and Mom singing along to something on the radio. And it was all so perfectly normal and wonderful that Minnie wanted to hold on to the moment forever. But there would be more moments, more adventures, more mysteries to solve and friends to help and bad guys to stop. Because that's what heroes did. And Minnie was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, she and her friends were heroes after all. The end.